Welcome back to the States. I'm your host, 45 Maquettes for Torquedellipses by Richard Serra. The words heart and cardiac are descended from the same Proto-Indo-European root. Well, this part of cardiac. Endings vary a lot between languages, and vowels ablaut in Proto-Indo-European, but inasmuch as these words are related, these can be considered doublets. And we're answering a question I posed last video: what English word has the most doublets? The reigning champion is Shear, descended from the Proto-Indo-European root sker, meaning to cut. This has 28 doublets against shred, scrape, scurvy, scrub, scrap, shrub, share, shard, short, shirt, skirt, score, shrew, shrimp, sharp, herd, carnivore, incarnation, carnival, carry-on, curtail, cortex, scripture, many prefixed verbs ending in scribe, corgi, Krishna, and Chernobyl. I have reclassified scrupulous as a stupid word along with cortisol, which brings it down to 27 doublets, 28 total, including itself. You see my methodology here. I am counting the 16 most common prefixed verbs as one doublet and not counting stupid words. Some of you guys were mad about what counts as a stupid word, so I've decided to make the definition even stricter. So we are going to have a bit of a Schnuba course before we jump into every Proto-Indo-European root in alphabetical order. Some supremely common vocabulary. First off, water. Water is from wed, the same root as wet, wash in O grade, and otter in 0 grade. It's actually a perfect demonstration of how vowel grades work for that reason. Now, Latin didn't really use this root for water, but they did make unda, which means wave, and gave English undulate, which is the most obvious, but also the prefixed abundance, inundate, and redundant. Undine, a German water spirit, will be placed in the stupid words. Hydro is, of course, a doublet, so I'll take hydro itself, same as the prefix. Hydrogen is probably safe on its own, as are hydrate and hydrant. Hydra is probably the squirreliest, but I think it's taken on life beyond solely the myth. Formaldehyde is a stupid word. The Latin word vitrum, meaning glass, is possibly related. Even if that's the case, the best word I could find is vitriol, which is bordering on stupid. From Slavic, we have vodka, and from Celtic, we have whiskey, for a liberal total of 13 doublets, 14 words total. Not enough. Fire is unlikely to beat that because there are 2 words for fire, a masculine wildfire and a neuter campfire. The neuter pehwer gives English fire. It appears only in Latin as purge, which is almost certainly influenced by purify, which is unrelated. This gives English purgatory, and spurge, a kind of shrub, is considered a stupid word. Greek has pyro, which is itself a word, and gives Latin pyre. It also gives burus from much earlier in Latin, and ultimately English bureau. Pyrite, a mineral also known as fool's gold, is tentatively excluded. Poppy, which is possibly another Latin version of the root, is tentatively included for a total of 7. The masculine hungnis gives Latin ignis and ultimately ignite. I will count the Sanskrit god Agni, but not the Albanian god Enyi. That gives 2. Since we're going this direction, I'll do tekom, earth, frequently seen squished to tkom or just kom. The English version is gum, which is probably itself a stupid word. Similarly, the Latin is humus, not the chickpea dip from Semitic. It's a word for leaf litter. Also from Latin is humility, lowliness, as well as human, earthling. That gives a lot of words that are still ultimately connected, so I won't add extra for hominoid, resembling a human, humanity, the state of being a human, and homunculus, which means little human being. A lot of words from other languages are even more stupid words. Zmei is a loaned word referring to a Slavic kind of dragon. The Russian name of land is loaned in the name of Novaya Zemlya. Greek gives chthonic and chthamalis, a genus of barnacles, though the abridged root gives chamomile and chameleon. And no, actually I will count chthonic. That's a total of 5. Heart is from Proto-Indo-European tert. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, this gives English heart and Greek cardio and Latin core, which shows up in the prefixed according, concord, discord, and record. Cordial and accordion are counted separately, and core is actually excluded. It also gives Latin credo for credit, credentials, creed, and courage for a total of 9. Alright, back to short, easily extendable roots. Blue and blow are both descended from a Proto-Indo-European root, pel. Unfortunately, they represent two distinct definitions of this root. Bell may represent a third, but it may also be a repeat of blow, which in theory is better because it inflates the numbers, but it also just makes what counts as a doublet even more confusing and hard to put a label on. So we'll start with the easy one, pel, meaning to burn or shine. This gives the colors black, blank, and blue directly from Germanic. Actually, blank and blue are both from Frankish via French. The name Blake may be derived from black, but we're not doing names. Latin is fulgeo, to blaze, or of lightning to strike. Now, geochemists may spot fulgurite and fulminate, but I'm only going to count the prefix effulgent. Latin has a couple of others, like fulvus, which is apparently a word for greenish-brown in English, but I've never heard it. With the swapped root, we have flame, and I am counting inflammation and flamboyant separately. Flagrant is from a similar root, which also gives flare, and conflagration, which I won't count. Greek adds in phlegm, which is probably a semantic relative of inflammation, and maybe some other words, but the closest I could get are phalacrocorax, the Latin name for a cormorant, and the flog from TF2. We also have Belarus, White Russia from Slavic, and maybe Baltic, but I'm not counting Belgrade. In total, that's 12, though there are a number of roots with similar meanings which may or may not be extensions. Bleach and bleak are the main two. Blink is likely, and even blank could flip-flop. Blaze is a bit more unclear, with blur and bleary as Werner's Law variants of that, with blemish received via French via Frankish. Bliss is an extension, and blithe may or may not be a stupid word. Bald is a best-case scenario, but it could be from another root. In total, that's 22, which is still nothing compared to the other definition of pel. Now, this one has even more contentious combinations of meaning. A lot of people like to lump in pel to blow with pel to make a noise, and it's even easier to include pelge to swell up, but it's not entirely resolved how related these really are. Anyway, ball is a direct result. We also have bull, bowl, balloon, and dubiously bullet via French. Boil, the sore, not the hot water. Bold and body is a stupid word. Bald could also just as easily be from this one, so I'm counting it for both. From confident extensions, we have blast, blood, blow, and not bloated. No, that's from a Proto-Germanic for soft via Norse. Insane. Latin only has one word, but that could easily be a ton of English words, with flavor, the prefix conflate, deflate, and inflate, and follicle. Greek adds phallic. Confident extensions in these languages give the Latin fluo, which gives fluid, fluorine, flume, flux, fluent, and the prefixed affluent, confluence, influence, and superfluous. And Greek palaina, though it may be pre-Greek, which gives baleen. Even though it's ultimately derived from the mineral fluorite, I will make the call to count fluorescent separately. Already, that is 22, so let's bring in the first potential extension. Pleh with an H1, meaning to blow, is easy to be confident about, but pleh with an H3, meaning to bloom, is harder. This gives Germanic bloom, blossom, and blade. The meaning blade of grass is actually an earlier form. Latin has flos, which not only gives flower, but also flourish and Florida, and Latin also has foliage, foil, and exfoliate. Greek probably deserves a mention. I don't know if chlorophyll is a stupid word, it probably is, but I'm going to include it as a bare prefix just to be safe. The Celtic version becomes Italian belladonna, which I don't think anyone in English uses to mean nightshade. That has the potential to add 10 more, but it's just a theory. Like I said earlier, there's also a third meaning of pel, to make a sound, which gives English bleat, blare, ball, and bell, and feeble via Latin. The main addition, like I said, would be from peld, to swell up. The direct root for this is belly. Germanic also gives bolster, bellow to scream, as well as bellows, the furnace things, bulge, budge, and budget from Celtic via French, maybe balk and maybe balcony from Italian. Belgium is loaned from a Celtic tribe in the area, and the only Latin version of the root is fullus, which gives fool and folly. That's 12 total. If we added up everything, yeah, I added boulder while you weren't looking because I forgot it, it would give us 49 doublets of ball, 50 words total. However, I'm just hesitant to do so. It feels cheap to me, and I'm certain that something more solid can come up. Speaking of which, we'll jump to Rake to set in order. The immediate English form is rake, the gardening tool named after the action of piling a bunch of stuff together. The more famous extension would be right, all definitions. I have a mind to separate the direction from the legal term, and maybe even from immediate, but it's mostly been a compact meaning through all of Germanic history, so we'll just keep it this way. Reckon is also a good example. Rack is from Dutch. Rank, like I mentioned last video, is from ring, but rank as in foul smelling is from strong and ultimately straight. Another common extension is king or kingdom, which gives us Reich via German, though the English equivalent is only seen in bishopric, and rich, which has semantic drifted even further, and drake, but specifically the male duck, so I will reduce that to a stupid word. And several names, notably Henry, Eric, and Richard. I don't like to count names, but these then give Dick a vulgar word for penis and America by one etymology. I still like the Amherst Mountains in Nicaragua. That's 9 from Germanic, with even more on the way from Latin and Greek. The Latin equivalent to rake gives regular, regulation, regimen, rule, realm, and rail, as well as the prefixed surge, source, dress, and the double prefixed address, redress, resource, and resurgence. Hey, there ain't nothing in the rule book about double prefixes. The Latin equivalent to right gives rectum, as well as the prefixed correct, direct, erect, and doubly prefixed resurrect and insurrection, and rectangle. Cognates to rich gives rex, king, which I guess is a good word, but not an English one, though regnal, royal, region, regal, and reign all are, maybe not regnal. It also potentially gives loa, via some Caribbean and French meddling, though I don't want to count that because it's maybe unrelated, and also, I only know the word from Hearthstone. The feminine Regina did not seem worth mentioning. Extending yourself or your words out towards something becomes rogo, to ask. This is only seen in the prefixed interrogate, prerogative, and surrogate. You know, inter isn't one of the prefixes I set aside at the beginning, so interrogate technically should be a separate word by my metrics. Anyways, rigid is somehow unrelated. Compare reach with the ya. Greek also has fewer words to add, giving anorexia, and that's pretty much it. What else? Derecho, a fast-moving thunderstorm via Spanish, and Raja, a Sanskrit name for king. I will count Sriracha, a sauce named after a city in Thailand, and Marathi is a language spoken in India, in the province of Maharashtra, by 100 million people, by the way. The feminine version is also a Doctor Who character. The Celtic version is used in names that ultimately give the Tudor dynasty of England. Archive is believed to be unrelated, and dirigible was deemed a stupid word. All in all, I'm not 100% sure how many to count, but that's 33 I'm comfortable with, making right the new winner for now. As I mentioned in this old thing, right is not the original root that means right. This is believed to be an extension of a root that means to perceive or take, as in take this the wrong way. Now, this is unique because it has no Germanic cognates. Well, it shows up quite a bit in Gothic, but that's not really useful to this video. It shows up a lot in Latin and Greek. We can see it varying its meaning with proper in the direct roots decent and decorate and maybe decorum. The O-grade verbs gives docile, doctor, doctrine, and document. The verb to dox is a stupid word. Circling back to being perceived well, we have dignity and to deign. And then the further evolution to being right, and then right-handed with dexterity and ambidextrous. And now we circle over to Greek. Dogma is the main option. Synecdoche is unfortunately excluded because I'm the only person that still uses it. Orthodox and paradox count separately because I only put a limit on prefixes for Latin. That's a whopping 14. Not astounding. 15 if we count the Hindu god Daksha. What's the catch? Well, when combined with chomt, it becomes detum. Yeah, that's the word for 10. Now, this is theoretical, but mostly the hand part. The proper part is a lot more likely to be related. And you know what's really funny is that this is then extended into tum-tum, which means 100. So let's start with 10. This also gives the teen and t suffixes of numbers, which I will count because they're different forms. Latin gives decimal, decimate, december, and the prefix deci. Decibel is a stupid word. Greek gives decade and the prefix deca, which is technically in use. That adds 9. Oh, that's uncomfortable. Let's check if there's a 10th. Venti from Starbucks. Oh, look, we made it to 0 letters in common. Unfortunately, it's a stupid word. Over to 100, we have the first part of 100, Latin century, cent, and the prefix centi. And sure, I'll count centipede. Hecato will regrettably be downgraded to a stupid word. Centum and satum. Look, I know that my audience who clicked on a video about Proto-Indo-European probably do know what centum and satum mean, but they are stupid words! So, that's a total of 29, and so with all its bluster, it doesn't even make it past right. Maybe someone will next week. Alright, see you guys later, comma.